This is CNN Breaking News.
Good evening, I'm Erin Burnett. Welcome to our viewers in the United States and around the world tonight. Out front, breaking news, an airport attack. We are learning tonight that the suspect in the deadly shooting at the Fort Lauderdale airport had been known to the FBI. Investigators have not officially named the gunman, but sources tell CNN he is now being identified as Esteban Santiago. He is accused of killing 5 people, injuring 8 others at least, as he opened fire in a crowded baggage area at the airport as people were getting their bags. The gunfire, of course, sparking panic, hundreds spilling out onto the tarmac, fearing for their lives. Law enforcement officials telling CNN that Santiago showed up several months ago at an FBI office in Anchorage, Alaska. At that time, he told agents, he went to the FBI office, he told agents he was hearing voices in his head telling him to join ISIS. President Obama, though, tonight did not call the shooting an act of terror.
I don't want to comment on it other than just to say how heartbroken we are for the families who've been affected. These kinds of tragedies have happened too often during the 8 years that I've been president.
Now, the FBI at this hour is interviewing the aunt of the alleged attacker at her home in New Jersey. We begin our coverage tonight of this breaking story with Boris Sanchez. He is at the Fort Lauderdale airport. And Boris, Santiago is now in police custody. This did not end in a shootout. He is alive. What more can you tell us about what led to this attack?
Well, Aaron, we're hearing reports from some passengers that were on board his flight that there was some kind of altercation, that there may have been an altercation with him on board. Right now here at Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport, we're starting to see the lift of a lockdown. A couple of civilians' cars have been allowed to pass through. Before that, it was only law enforcement. And if you look over my left, there's a large group of law enforcement officers over there slowly escorting passengers out of the terminal where all of this happened. We asked one of them if he would speak with us. He told us he just wanted to go home. Understandably, he didn't want to talk to us in light of a day that he will not likely soon forget. Just before 1 p.m., a gunman opens fire at Fort Lauderdale International Airport. Chaos inside Terminal 2. At least 13 people shot with multiple casualties. This cell phone video shows people lying on the floor in the baggage claim area. The panic inside the terminal then spills outside as hundreds run from the gunshots, flooding onto the tarmac and out onto the runways. The injured quickly evacuated to a nearby hospital.
Everybody started running out of Terminal 1, out of the rental car place. Some lady was yelling for help down in the garage, so I just ran.
CNN has learned that the suspected shooter left Alaska earlier today, bound for Fort Lauderdale. He declared a firearm when boarding, that weapon packed inside his luggage. Sources say the suspect may have gotten into an altercation during the flight. And on arrival, after retrieving his bag, one source tells CNN he went into a bathroom and came out firing. Long after the shooting, hundreds continue to run through open areas around the airport, some driven by false reports of additional shootings.
The shooter in custody, he's unharmed. No law enforcement fired any shots. The subject is being interviewed by a team of FBI agents and Broward Sheriff's Office homicide detectives. At this point, it looks like he acted alone.
Multiple sources identify the alleged shooter as Esteban Santiago. He's said to have been a member of the Alaska National Guard, leaving the Guard last July. And we're learning more about his military record. It turns out he served in the National Guard in Puerto Rico, Missouri, and Alaska as well. We're also learning, Aaron, that he served overseas in Iraq for a little over a year.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it, Boris. I want to go now straight to Evan Perez out front in Washington. I mean, Evan, pretty stunning, the news you broke. The gunman spoke to the FBI, went in their offices a couple months ago and told them that he talked to them about ISIS.
That's right, Aaron. The picture that's beginning to emerge is of a man who was struggling with mental health issues. And that is what happened a couple months ago when he showed up at the Anchorage, Alaska FBI office and said that he was hearing voices. He said that the voices were saying, including that he should join ISIS. Now, it appears that he had these voices and his complaints and what he was talking about had aroused some concern among some people who were around him. And so when he went to the FBI office, the FBI called the local authorities, and they took him to a local hospital where he checked himself in for a mental health evaluation. Now, there is where we don't know what happens next. We don't know how long he was there. We don't know what the result of all that, the mental health checks that happened, but we do know that that's really the only significant interaction that law enforcement had with this suspect. He didn't have much of an arrest record over the last few years, and so the next thing we know is he shows up on this flight in Fort Lauderdale. As Boris just mentioned, there was some reports from some of the witnesses who've been interviewed by the FBI and by the Broward Sheriff's Office down there in Fort Lauderdale that there might have been some kind of altercation, but apart from that, nothing that really explains the motivation. At this point, he did not show up on any kind of radar for the FBI as someone who might have been extremist or radicalized. But really, it does raise some very important questions, right? If this is a man who had sought mental health help in Alaska, what kind of process is there for that information to be shared, perhaps to prevent him from getting on an aircraft with a checked luggage, with his gun checked in luggage, and then carry out this attack in Fort Lauderdale?
All right, Evan, thank you very much. I mean, pretty stunning. He did go himself to the FBI and say he was hearing voices telling him to join ISIS. Out front now, the Florida Governor, Rick Scott. And Governor Scott, thank you for being with me. I am sorry it is under horrible circumstances again. I know you just had a chance to speak to President Obama about this attack. What did he tell you?
Well, he reached out just a few minutes ago, and he said, you know, his prayers are with the families, and also offered whatever resources that we might need. I heard from President-elect Trump this afternoon and Vice President-elect Pence this afternoon about this. I can tell you, Aaron, this is disgusting. It's evil. Nobody in our state is going to tolerate this. We'll do everything we can to hold whoever is accountable for this to the full extent of the law. There's an ongoing investigation. I just left the airport. I've been briefed this afternoon about what was happening, and there's a lot of unanswered questions. But we're going to hold people accountable. My focus is, you know, to keep everybody safe in my state. We are doing everything we can. I've reached out to our National Guard to make sure they're ready. You know, all the airports in our state, sheriff's offices. We are helping displaced passengers. We have the website floridadisaster.org/info for any displaced passengers to help them.
And you are talking to investigators, as you just said. What are you learning about a motive? I don't know if you just heard our Evan Perez, but he said this man had gone into the FBI offices under his own auspices in Alaska, said he was hearing voices telling him to join ISIS. What are you learning tonight about a motive?
Well, Aaron, there's a lot of unanswered questions. We're still learning a lot about the shooter. So there's still a lot of information. The law enforcement will be putting out more information as they have it. It's disgusting. It's evil. We're not going to tolerate it. But I know they're working very hard. The local, state, and federal law enforcement is working well together. No different than what happened after Pulse. This is law enforcement wants to do everything they can to keep people safe.
And President Obama did not say this was an act of terror when asked. Do you think it was?
There's still, you know, Aaron, there's so many unanswered questions. We know what we do know is it's evil. I mean, it's absolutely evil. I mean, think about it. These innocent individuals. Some still are, you know, they're still, hopefully, they will survive. We have individuals in the hospital. I hope all of those survive. But, you know, it's just absolutely evil. 5 people just lost their lives senselessly.
All right, Governor Scott, thank you very much.
Out
front now, Chris Swecker, the former Assistant FBI Director for the Criminal Investigative Division, Art Roderick, former U.S. Marshal, and retired U.S. Army Major General Spider Marks. General Marks, what we're learning tonight, when the shooter was being interviewed by the FBI, again, he went in under his own direction. Nobody forced him to. He said he was hearing voices in his head, some telling him to join ISIS. They let local authorities know he went into a mental hospital, but he's not on the government radar for terrorism, allowed to fly, take a gun on a plane. How could that happen?
Well, first of all, the connection also is to his time as a National Guardsman. At least we understand his time as a National Guardsman. Did any of this occur when he was in status as a reservist, or I'm sorry, as a Guardsman? And what did he notify his chain of command? Were they involved in some way? Was there some referral that might have been helpful as well? But I think the key thing is when somebody self-refers, in other words, somebody raises his hand and says, look, I've got an issue, and then you go into either law enforcement office or you go into a medical institution, whether it's mental or whether it's a physical medical type of a challenge.
They take it less seriously? I mean, in a sense?
Well, no. My point is that there's nothing that can be done legally. We are wrapped in so many legal, literal legal restrictions that would prohibit very decisive actions, where a common sense approach might be, we need to put this person over to the side and we might do some form of evaluation, but you can't do that. You legally are prohibited from doing that.
Chris, he shot 13 people. He got off a plane, he got his bag, he went in the bathroom, he got the gun out, he went and shot 13 people. We understand that there may have been a disagreement on the plane, but what he did, getting that bag, going in the bathroom, coming out, 13 people, could this be premeditated?
Very much so. You know, it depends on whether he fit the legal definition of insanity. I mean, that's out there right now. But when you talk about premeditated murder, you can take 60 seconds, you can take 10 seconds to premeditate a murder. In this case, he flew, he arranged his own flight. Something may have happened on the flight, and as you say, he went through a lot of deliberate action and then came out shooting. So it does sound like, if that is true, it does sound like he came out and targeted at least one or two individuals coming out of the bathroom.
Art, what does this say to you about a motive?
Well, it says to me, I think when you boil this down just purely from a law enforcement perspective, you've got an individual here that's got mental health issues. And Aaron, how many times have we talked about mental health issues when it comes to active shooter incidents? It's almost every single time. Even when we talk about terrorist attacks, they're not mutually exclusive. You know, there's a mental health issue in this country that has got to be addressed, and the general's correct. There are so many protections for somebody to raise the level high enough to reach the point where they can't carry a gun or they can't fly. It's a very high standard.
And Chris, you know, before we go, what do you make of this crucial fact? He gave himself up to police. This didn't end in a shootout. He is alive. They are questioning him right now.
Yeah, that's not sort of a jihadist type act. I mean, this will to survive. He's not spouting jihadist ideology. I think that his reference to ISIS when he went into the FBI in this case is just going to be sort of tangential. I don't think it's going to be a central theme to this. I think, as Art points out, I think mental illness is the central theme to this incident, and we've seen these before. Columbine, Aurora, Colorado, the list goes on and on and on.
All right, thank you all. And next, we're going to go live to New Jersey. That is where FBI agents are questioning the suspect's aunt at this hour. Breaking news, we have new details about the man police say is engaged in that shooting rampage at Fort Lauderdale Airport at this hour. 5 dead, 8 wounded. Sources telling CNN the suspect is Esteban Santiago, a former member of the Alaska Army National Guard. Just moments ago, the FBI interviewing his aunt in New Jersey, searching for clues and answers, trying to understand what the motive might have been. Deborah Farrick is out front Union City. And Deborah, what are they learning right now? What do you know from Santiago's aunt?
Well, what we do know is that they were here for about 45 minutes. They were questioning the aunt who lives in the home just behind me there. You can see some little blue lights. She lives in the house next door. And there were about 8 agents and police officers who were here speaking to the family. They're trying to get as much information as they can to try to get an understanding as to why this happened. What we do know is that the shooter was born here in New Jersey. He moved to Puerto Rico, and it was there that he joined the National Guard and was deployed in 2010 to Iraq. Now, his aunt tells reporters that when he returned after about a year or 2 year long stint over in Iraq, he was acting strangely. He did, however, seem happy about a year ago with the birth of a child, and the aunt was completely dumbfounded as to why this happened, telling reporters that she just didn't know why it had happened. What we do know is that he was in Fairbanks, Alaska, prior to his discharge in August of this year. He was discharged for unsatisfactory performance. We're now learning that, in fact, he did make the radar of law enforcement officials there in Alaska when he basically approached them saying that he was hearing voices, and that's when he voluntarily checked himself in for a psychiatric evaluation. Again, we don't know what he was doing going to Fort Lauderdale, but again, this has taken the family very much by surprise, Aaron.
All right, Deborah, thank you very much. And of course, shocking when you hear the news there being a new child in this too. This comes as airports across the nation are now trying to increase their security following this horrific shooting at Fort Lauderdale Airport. Renee Marsh is out front. I mean, Renee, obviously we saw a horrific attack that was terrorism in Turkey. We're now seeing this here at Fort Lauderdale with this shooter. How concerned are authorities now? I mean, he was able to just get a gun off of the baggage claim and just shoot people.
They're very concerned. I spoke with two police chiefs, airport police chiefs today, and they say although they train for this sort of active shooter scenario, their hearts just simply dropped when they saw the event unfolding in Fort Lauderdale, because the bottom line is this can happen anywhere. It can happen at any airport across the country. All airports across the nation have this so-called soft target area, the area of the airport before you get to the TSA security checkpoint that is vulnerable. And any law enforcement official, any law enforcement expert will tell you it is virtually impossible to get the vulnerability down to zero. So when you see the situation like what we saw in Fort Lauderdale, it really does send chills up and down the spine of law enforcement charged with protecting airports across the country. In that spirit, we have heard from several major airports, from LA to airports right there in New York City, who've told CNN that they have stepped up their law enforcement presence in that soft area of the airport directly as a result of what happened in Fort Lauderdale, Aaron.
And Renee, people are saying that he had the gun in his checked baggage, right? He declared it. He had a gun. He went to the bathroom, he pulled it out, and he came back out. I mean, people are just allowed to do that, and are you allowed to do it even if you're flying into a state that doesn't allow you to carry a gun?
He did everything right at this point. Based on all of the information that we had, he did everything legally. You are indeed allowed to carry a firearm as well as ammunition in your checked luggage. You cannot obviously take it on board in your carry-on luggage, but you can take it in your checked luggage. It has to be unloaded. The firearm cannot have ammo in it. It has to be stored in a hard side case. So there are strict guidelines for how to carry a firearm in checked luggage. You also have to declare it. But as you saw, there's nothing stopping an individual from retrieving that gun and opening fire in that soft target area of the airport, Aaron.
Which is pretty stunning in any place, including states where you'd expect no such thing because it would be against the law. Thank you, Renee. So let's go now to our counterterrorism analyst, Phil Mudd, former Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Transportation, Mary Schiavo, and Art Roderick joins me back as well. Mary, it is pretty stunning. He did everything legally. It is legal. Wherever you're flying, to declare your gun, put it in hard case, carry your ammo, check it, and you're good.
Right. I think the only glitch here, the only people that didn't follow the rules might have been Alaska Airlines, if that was the airline. And their regulations on site state that you have to get your bag with the gun in it by presenting your ID at the bag claim office. Could that have made a difference had they proceeded in this way? Would the fellow have had time to calm down or some other method? But that's the only thing I see here where the rules were not followed. The way that the bag was claimed and the ID or the bag claim check was not presented at the bag claim office.
Phil, when these horrible things happen, we so often look at the details and say, how could the rules be this way? And here we are again. Do you think that is an outrage that's fair to have? How could the rules be this way? And why is the security zone in airports not wider?
Well, that's right.
I don't think that's an answer.
Sorry, go ahead, Phil.
I don't think we're going to have answers here that are pleasing to us at all. I think we're going to walk away in the coming days and say there's not very much we can do. Let's look at the airport itself. We are looking at this incident in isolation. I'd encourage you, before we go down this road of saying let's secure baggage areas, to understand the targets we've witnessed just in the past 5 years. Museums, beach resorts, open-air markets in Germany last month, synagogues, churches, schools. At some point, you have to step back and say, in an open society, this is going to happen if you allow people to carry a weapon onto, not onto an aircraft, but in the baggage compartment of an airplane. And it's going to happen in museums, and it's going to happen in shopping malls. We can't look at this in isolation, Aaron.
Which is a very fair point. And yet, Art, this is something that had happened. It was a terror attack in the case of Turkey. We don't know the motive yet here, where they rushed in, again, into the unsecured areas of the airport, the arrivals and departures. It did not appear that there were any security measures long-term that were taken in this country. It was obviously very easy for him to do this.
I mean, Aaron, you can only push out the security so far, and right 1 foot beyond that security is going to be a soft area. So it's very difficult to determine where you actually stop security or where you begin security. I think another key point here that I saw after watching this all unfold today is, why did they keep the airport open? I know this happened at a terminal, but then they kept the other terminals open, and people are on Snapchat, they're on Twitter talking about what they just saw, and I think that caused a lot of this false positive reporting that occurred at the other terminal, causing everybody to start running, which shifts law enforcement from an active crime scene.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think law enforcement has to sit back and look at venues that have thousands of people in them and determine, hey, we should shut this whole venue down. Now, I know that flies in the face of commercial airlines, but the law enforcement response, I think, is the key issue here. And to pull people away on false positive reports from an active crime scene is really, that's the detriment to law enforcement investigating this crime.
And Phil, the bottom line here, as we know that this individual had gone to the FBI and talked about how he heard voices, including ISIS, encouraging him to join ISIS. He then went to a hospital voluntarily, got a mental health evaluation. Is this going to end up, in your view, being something that could have been stopped? I mean, or do you think the FBI simply has so many people walking in saying these sorts of things that they can't be putting them on lists?
Look, if you walk into the FBI and you have voices in your head, I don't care if you're talking about ISIS, I don't care if you're talking about Jesus Christ, I don't care if you're talking about a video you saw on the internet, that's information that suggests mental instability. That is not a crime. So if I were at the FBI yesterday and tomorrow, I would do the same thing. The person needs to be reviewed. If somebody's suggesting this is an FBI fault just because somebody who appears to be insane muttered the word ISIS, I'd say think again. One quick point, Aaron. When I was at the CIA, people showed up at the front gate all the time saying they had stuff that we installed in their head. We're not going to investigate them. We're going to turn them away.
All right. Thank you all very much. And next, a U.S.